Hi, everybody. So I vaguely promoted this stream, and it's hard for me to promote these. So I'm gonna actually remind my Twitter followers that whichever ones actually see my tweets, which is very few, because I am under some sort of new shadow banning thing. So it's not like people are actually really gonna see this, but I figure I got to do it when I'm live now. And so I'm going to copy that. Oh, that's not what I meant to copy. That's not what I meant to copy at all. I mean to copy this. Oh god, I'm sorry. There we go. And so looks like we do have like one viewer. That's cool. Thank you for tuning in. I'm going to put that in on my minds. I'm live now, and I'm going to put it in my Facebook fan page. Hopefully we'll just get a few viewers, because I think that we actually have. Oh, I have to open up Facebook again. How tedious. How annoying. Yeah. Because I'm literally annoyed by this person in my extended social sphere. You would have never met him because he's from San Francisco, okay. but he's like kind of a fairy actually. And then I can close out the window and we will just talk. Okay, things have been posted. Consequences will never be the same. So I am talking to my friend Harry, who I actually met a number of years ago. It would have been about coming up on 4 years ago. We met in, I believe, probably spring of 2015. So probably.
Yes.
Yeah. And I had just moved up to Seattle after a long series of personal events. For me, there were about 9 reasons of me wanting to get out of San Francisco, and then it was kind of like the most intense personal reasons ended up kind of being the final decision making reasons that really got me out of there. Yeah. But it was like I already didn't want to be there. I already saw 85% of my entire social surroundings leave. I already didn't like the new people. I already hated my living situation. I already like there was all of these things that were there, and then more and more racism, just blatant racism. Like all these people were just like, they hated white people, or they hated people who weren't black enough, or they hated people who were speaking about issues that didn't concern them enough. Like if someone was talking about, indigenous things, but they weren't indigenous, but like it was just this like constant, it was just racism. Like it was
outrage culture kind of.
Yeah. And the best way to describe it is simply racism. Like, like these are people that were really into this notion of seeing the world through race-colored goggles. And I was already noticing that. What I wasn't really noticing so much of by the time I left San Francisco, and this was just me being in my own little bubble, like honestly, because I was a somebody down in San Francisco. Like I was a definite like person to know, which I'm sure you could tell by the way you were introduced to me. I didn't know that feminism held it all together. Like I didn't entirely know that. I knew that you're supposed to like not be a racist, but I didn't know that the people who were in charge, who were trying to tell everybody like, the people who were telling everybody how not to be racist, except for they were the most racist ones of all. Those people were all feminists. And ultimately there was a definite chain of command of who's sort of in command. And it was kind of in Seattle, certainly, women. Like if you're actually in the city limits of Seattle and you're around social justice culture, it's all women that control these organizations. Like you look at the homepage of the Seattle organization Gay City, and you could never even think that it was a gay thing. You might as well, like, seriously, it's like a picture of like, meet our family, and there's like 15 people, 4 of them dudes, you know, like, and the women are right in the front. It's pretty embarrassing. So that's what it's like. And I started to notice that things were like that in Seattle when I came up, and you were one of the people that I met that so we met each other through this guy that we're going to get back to later. But,
yeah,
because I have plenty to say about him.
Yeah,
But but the thing is about him is that he doesn't understand Seattle at all. Like, he just didn't get it at all in any way. But you and I both grew up here, and in fact went to the same far leftist radical public schools.
Yeah, we did. Oh my god, that was fun. Kind of. Oh my god.
Which was ultimately like a really fun school to go to.
Yeah.
And like, you could go there and get really, really good at doing a few things, like if you wanted to, because they allowed you to like fully explore your creative potential, be it.
Yeah, it's kind of set up like a college, you know. You pick your schedule, you pick what credits you want, you kind of,
a lot of, I think the most common destination for college after that high school is Evergreen.
Absolutely. Like, all of my friends from Nova went to Evergreen. And I didn't go there, but we can talk about Evergreen some other time.
Yeah. But yeah, okay. So now that I was a little bit shy about saying what this high school was, just having it come back to my identity. But to be perfectly honest, I'm not as secretive about my identity as I was a year ago, certainly. And when things were a little bit, the left, like the far leftist radicals, the feminists, the fight between the traditional feminists and the TERFs is like now becoming a major issue. That's like, they're like actually fighting a bunch. And then like the anti-symmetry of the Women's March is becoming a major issue. The left is crashing and burning, eating itself like starving piranhas. Like, I called it. I knew that was going to happen eventually. So I'm a little bit less afraid of, being honest about because I've always been honest about who I am. Like, I've always been honest about like, what are the scope of like what I actually care. Okay. I'm not going to go into some like moral virtue signaling thing about why I had my identity somewhat, secret-ish. But one of the things I was legitimately scared of saying that I went to Nova Alternative High School, which, granted, I graduated about 18 years ago.
Yeah,
so and that place, a lot of kids go there. Like if you live in Seattle and you're involved in like any sort of like culture, like music, culture, art scene, far leftist organizing of any variety, you're gonna meet people that went there.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I took more advantage of the music scene there. I just didn't. I was really shy, and I personally can play several different instruments, but I was just too shy to socialize with them. So I kind of look back and wish I could do that, but that's beside the point. I digress.
So you were one of the people that I met that I immediately felt like you actually understood Seattle. And we sort of formed a little bit of a camaraderie based around that. But then
I hope I understand it.
well, you at least understand the culture because you grew up in it. And then you moved away immediately.
I know. Man, that's what happens, right? Mm-hmm. We're still in touch though.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, I wanted to ask you actually, how would you say like Seattle has changed since 2015? Like, because I'm kind of curious about that.
I am too, because I never try to like I actively seek to hide from the weirdness of it all. Like I
Yeah.
know that there is these people that are out there that are wackos.
Oh, fuck yeah.
There's like, I see Antifa stickers someplace sometimes, and but I actively try to avoid that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's hard to say. I do know for a fact that there's like there's like it's so people associate with this with the like the Republican Party, or maybe even the far right, but like this phenomenon of the silent majority, where the majority of people are able to actually observe what's going on and see what's fair and what's not fair and make up their own minds. And what's demonstrably unfair is this culture that simultaneously says that Muslims are the most holy people, except for when they also hate Jewish people, and then also they also really, really hate gay people. And
Yeah.
it's like people are like, maybe I just don't want to have anything to do with any of you, like, and most people are probably saying that more and more, and I've encountered them more and more. Like
Right.
I've encountered, but it, like, one time this summer, a friend of mine who used to be like a far leftist person in sentiment, but I don't think he's ever been actually political. Like, I
Yeah,
think
that's the thing.
yeah, there's so many of those. There's so many
Yeah.
people where it's like you wanted to be an activist, but like, what principles do you espouse? Do you like actually even know? And they're like, peace and anti-racism or something, like,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of those people, and this guy I think was a little bit like that, but he mostly just was into music and stuff. And then
Mhm.
he just got fed up with the political people around him, and somehow he and I actually got in an argument with two of his straight friends on social media, and they were so confident that they could turn him against me. Like okay, so they're like a husband and wife, and
Uh-huh.
long story short, they couldn't turn him against me because he actually sided with me. And then it turned out that he was planning on hosting a small invite only event at his place for basically gay dissidents. So there was guys like he and I who aren't technically Republicans, and then one guy who's like definitely very much Republican, and a few other guys that would, I think, self-identify as conservatives or libertarians or something. And we had our little hang out and like actually talk about this stuff in a city where you're not allowed to say these things. Like we can't go to gay bars and say, and we can't go to gay bars and admit that we appreciate anything about Milo Yiannopoulos, except for we all do. Like, we all watched him speak to those feminists, and we were very, very satisfied to see him saying out loud something that we had all been thinking for years,
It
like,
must have taken a lot of courage.
yeah. And so like, we are having this, like, trying to have this discussion about things. And, I was probably the most politically well-versed out of us. And so there was largely me talking about, feminists taking over gay male spaces, because that's what they do.
Yep.
And there was literally a stowaway, some guy who, like, I don't even entirely know how he ended up at the party, but he was not invited to the party. Like, he was actively not invited to this
like,
party.
Party bombed? What?
Yeah, I think the deal
Party
was
crack.
okay, so it was at a house, and I think that they had a spare bedroom, and this guy had to like get out of the previous living situation that he was at, and so he ended up just like being there. But I think that my friend made it clear that he's like, well, this is for a specific type of guy, and so okay, it was so funny. Like, I'm sitting there talking about how gay guys are, you know, like feminists they try to take control over gay male spaces, and they try to exert some sort of, you know, matriarchal law, like the feminist law, like, and they try to exert that over gay spaces. And this guy wouldn't let me finish a sentence. And he's like, what are you talking about? Nobody does that. Nobody's silencing you. I mean, people don't hate men. I mean, they hate patriarchy, blah, 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 blah. And it was like, I realized the next day, I was like, he was literally exactly what I was complaining about. It was literally that fucking guy that was, you know, like that. So like that, it's like, on the one hand, we had the silent majority. We had the amount of people enough to fill up a small private residence with a good conversation. And we all really felt this way. And we really, but then at the same time, there's this like loud and completely clueless, delusional, far leftist, just, I don't want to say moron,
right,
but they're just, they do not understand that they don't get to like throw a tantrum and like get their way. And I know that those people are still out there too. So that would be my answer for the way that Seattle is probably changing. But you know, I still hide for the most part, and I'm very very busy with my work. Like it takes a lot to make these videos, and you know, even on the off day where I kind of like ramble and blah 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 on some of my videos where they're not nearly as good, doing the research, like getting that stuff together, it's very very taxing work. And so like considering delving into the realm of like going on the ground and trying to get to know people again, it's like I would have to like completely restructure the way I view my channel and stuff.
Yeah. So. Yeah, that would be actually kind of interesting if you kind of like had a live thing going on where you were like in downtown Seattle with a microphone and you were just like talking to people about feminism and stuff like that, and seeing what, you know, the average person on the street in Seattle has to think about various topics. You know, just to see, you know, the cross section of that. That would be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'd have to get a woman to be my human shield.
Yeah, exactly. You have to. Yeah, you could have her even like with her own thing, you know. But
yeah. Well, no, I mean, I would have to have it be a woman who is like non-threatening to these people and everything, but like, you know, ultimately sort of sides with me in terms of the arguments, but like isn't gonna, you know, like, but I can't tokenize one of my friends like that, you know. So
yeah, it's true.
But I have a few female friends that I can think of 4 offhand that I have had extensive conversations about things like men's rights and or just things like how feminists are the reverse of empowering for you know, victims and survivors of sexual misconduct and domestic abuse and that kind of thing. Like they think that feminists really do women wrong in the way that they deal with it, because they don't actually understand things like rape and domestic violence. They just pretend to, and that they feel that does a disservice to women, you know, like, or maybe them specifically. So
yeah, when I was in high school, I mean, it was my fault. I was kind of stupid. I mean, sometimes I say stupid things, but I was joking because it was like on picture day, and I was like, yeah, I pretty much raped my hair with conditioner. And then this like feminist behind me was like, excuse me, you can't say that. That is a very violent, repulsive word. How dare you say that? That you'd use that word so lightly. And I was like, oh my God, what the fuck did I just do? You know?
Yeah.
Whoops. You know? I mean, that was in bad taste. I'll admit, that was in pretty bad taste.
No, but not really, though.
You know?
Not really.
I mean, I was like 15 or 16, you know, like whatever.
Yeah, well, no, what's annoying to me is like, okay, like you take a situation where a feminist tries to like have a Me Too story, you know, like remember the Aziz Ansari Me Too story?
Yes.
It was so obscenely not that bad, you know, like the fact that this like somehow developed into like some sort of sexual misconduct allegation, like after she consented to going on a date with him. He didn't, forcefully penetrate her. It was just like this awkward hookup. And then as soon as he realized it was awkward, he was like, okay, I called you a cab or something, the fact that there's women who are parading that around as if it's the equivalent of rape or something, that is actually completely belittling.
I have this idea, I think that these incidences are kind of like resources that can be extracted that feminists use. Like they see these incidents of alleged rape as like a resource for them to extract and use in their conversation with prospective audience members, them being claims makers and trying to make an overall statement about the direction that our society is going in, and trying to make people,
they've developed a veritable Swiss Army knife of ways in which to manipulate people.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't even think it's about like whether or not the girl was actually like harmed or anything. It's more like, how valuable is this as a piece of information to use against our enemies? You know?
Yeah.
And that's what I think is wrong with it.
Oh, absolutely. And what this is what in particular seemingly annoyed one of my female friends who has been, she's an attractive woman who likes to party and stuff, and does not mind having, sex with lots of guys. So sure. she ends up in situations where things happened. And I have a Me Too story on my channel, and it's this, the first, 10 minutes of it is me trying to sound as melodramatic as possible and try to talk about how I was violated. And in terms of like what happened to Aziz Ansari, or what that young woman in question, my story was way worse. Like my story is about like this guy was in my own bed and he like kind of like wouldn't leave, and I got into my own bed and he was pleasuring himself, and then he pulled out his dick and was like slapping the back of my back for like 10-20 minutes or so, and which was like,
that's unnerving.
Yeah, because it's like okay, this is my apartment, how do I get rid of this guy? Because I had known him for like well over a decade,
okay, really? Okay, so real well.
Yeah, and so it was actually kind of a really awkward thing.
That is like,
but at the same time, the real story is that like I was doing drugs at that time, and we were both like coming down off of drugs, and it wasn't nearly so big of a deal because I could excuse the fact that he was not quite understanding my frame of mind, and I chose to just let him come down a bit and get to his senses. And I tell my female friend about this, and she's like, thank you, because that's what happens. Guys do drugs, they get horny, they start putting their dick on your lower back, and you just have to kind of wait it out sometimes. She's like, sometimes you got to punch them, but that's rare, And that's how a woman who deals with these types of situations, who's been through them, that's how she'll talk about them.
Yeah, she has like thick skin, kind of.
Yeah, because she likes having sex, she knows what she's getting into. Yeah.
It's so funny that people really like actually have no idea what they're getting into, and they have all these expectations and whatever. So, we should talk about The Gathering.
Well, yeah, I'm really okay. So the way that that Harry, as I like to call him, and I know each other is the person that we met through is big into radical fairy culture, and I have an entire video about the radical fairies called Feminism and the Radical Fairies Part 1, Incompatibility, in which it just basically says like, look, this is supposed to be for gay men, and you cannot fit feminism into that by any there's no way of having that be the thing. And I'm gonna have a Feminism and the Radical Fairies Part 2 video. It's called It's going to be called Communism, and I'm going to talk about how there's an overlap between the radical fairies and the communists, because the guy who's credited as like, you know, popularizing or coining the phrase the radical fairies is a guy named Harry Hay, and Harry Hay was at one point a member of the Communist Party. So a lot of current far leftist queer wackos just think that like the radical fairies are actually gay communists, which isn't entirely true.
Not at all.
And it's also not even like agreed upon by the current people. Like there's all sorts of like infighting, and then it like turns out that somebody has authoritarian control and can like ban people from the land, and then it turns out that that person's a communist. Like all sorts of weird crap. So I want to hear your experience for a while, and I want you to talk for a while. I want to like minimally insert things. I want you to get in the zone here.
Okay, I'll do my best here. The first time I went to a rainbow gathering was in 2013, and it was in Montana, and I didn't know what to expect. I will be honest, it wasn't because I was aware of underground cool things. It was because I had a family member who did it, and he invited me to go along, and I thought, why not, you know? And I'm not a lot like most of the people at the rainbow gathering, because a lot of those people are homeless or are just kind of like older hippie types. But there are all sorts of people mixed in there, you know. It's quite diverse, really, but you know,
but you say homeless. I just want sort of gypsy homeless, right?
Well, I almost think of it as kind of like a homeless convention, but I didn't start thinking that until like the second time I went, you know? Because I'll be honest, like the first time I went, at first I was kind of scared because I was like, holy crap, it's the middle of the woods. How am I going to be comfortable? Like I'm a city kid. What the fuck, you know? 7,000 feet up. Fuck this. But got used to it. Got pretty immersed in it. It was pretty exciting and fun. But, you know, second time around, kind of began to see through it, you know? So, you know, it's fun to go to once or twice, you know? But like, you know, there's some people who go every year. But I always was with the radical fairies when I went to the gathering, and about half of them.
I want to ask how were you with the radical fairies?
What do you mean by that? Like, what was my relationship with them like?
Well, you said that you were you said that you were always with the radical fairies when you went to the rainbow gatherings. Mm-hmm. Now, how was it that you were first with the radical fairies?
Well, that's because my relative was associated with them, actually.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yes. Which is really fucking weird, actually. And I can get into that another time, but I won't even talk about this on this.
No, you were talking about that in private to me. We shouldn't talk about him.
Yeah, so. Of course not. No. Anyways, so there's, you know, about half of the people there pretty much are like the same reoccurring characters. I call them characters because, you know, they're not like your everyday, like, rational, normal people that you, like, see. I mean, sure, you know, it's not nice to say normal or, net rational, all that shit, whatever, but, you know, people out there are pretty spooky. People at the gathering are pretty spooky, and they're not very rational, you know. But, you know, there are some good people there. It's kind of funny, though, because it's like they're always, like, the same reoccurring characters, and they're all just really horrible in their own way. So you already kind of know what's going to happen when you first, you know, take foot there, when you've been there more than once, you know. But, you know, I would say that at the fairy camp, it was about like 75% male, 25% female. Maybe like of the females there, maybe like half of them were bisexual, the other half were straight, you know. There were some fairies who had girlfriends there, which is whatever that was. You know, but it was cool because, you know, I'm one of these people who, like, I try not to judge people, and I just try to, like, take whatever wisdom I can from people. So, like, I was all about, like, you know, even if someone looks batshit crazy, I'll still, like, try to talk to them and see if I can gain any insight, you know, from, like, what they have to offer, you know? Maybe they might not be able to offer me anything, but, so that's kind of, like, why I enjoyed it a little bit there. But, you know, I thought that maybe these people might be decent friends outside of the gathering. You know, I didn't know. So, you know, I got the numbers, few of these people, added them on social media, all this stuff, and I realized that they really just, like, were always begging for money. That's, like, all they really did was just beg for money. And
Did they all have victim stories?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, not all of them. I mean, like, there are some cool people there. Like, I met some people
but the people
my
who
own
were
age there who were
the people who were begging for money.
Sorry, can you ask that again? I'm really sorry.
So were the people who were begging for money, did they all have a victim story to go along with it?
I would say so, yeah. Like, you know, one of them's like, oh, I've got this really painful medical condition. I'm in excruciating pain. It's like, because you had unprotected sex with like a dirty person, you know? Like, but it's like a victim story. It's like that kind of shit. Like, and like, then there's like our I wouldn't call him our mutual friend, you know, because like I don't really consider the guy my friend, and you definitely don't.
Oh yeah, I can't stand this guy. We call him. We will refer to him as Voldemort.
Yeah, he is
an absolute monster of like what can happen if you find various drug scenes and then the various drug scenes become a nexus of homeless-ish lost souls, and then some people decide to start mixing like ideological politics of the oppressed into it, and then somebody decides to take advantage of all of that crap. Well, that would be Voldemort.
Yeah, definitely.
But he's not even powerful enough to like have climbed the ranks to be Voldemort. It was just like he just like had that aspiration amongst the community, clearly,
to call shots in these fringe lost soul communities. Is that what you're saying?
You know, the thing is about Voldemort is that there's people in these far leftist. Okay, so the far leftist structure, it's always like there's an actual structure, and it has been dating back since before World War II. There has always been a United States Communist Party, and there's always been people who preach that same tune of like the haves, the have-nots. We got to make sure that the haves give the stuff to the have-nots, and that's what we got to do. And it's changed, and the story has changed in terms of like what they're trying to accomplish. You know, now it's currently things like open borders, and because the United States is the haves, and you know, places everybody else should deserve to just come here, even if they are, you know, just random people that we haven't vetted from somewhere like Honduras or somewhere from the Middle East. Like, hey, just bring them on in. That's what they're sort of trying to say. But they also have long tried to weaponize the women's movement, and the women's movement is the thing that gained the most significant traction in academia. They were trying to say that women were the have-nots, which is just demonstrably untrue by all metrics.
A successful track record, if you think about it. I mean,
yeah,
20s. Think about like the 1920s, right? Like teens and 20s, right? We could have been focusing on like inequality and shit like that, but instead it was like about those rich wives of the robber barons.
Yeah, the whammon.
Feminism. Like, this is how I see it, you know? Just calling it like it is.
Yeah, the whammon. Will somebody please think of the poor whammon? That's always sort of been there. And then the black, this is an interesting thing that people should really keep in mind, was that there was always black communists in the United States Communist Party.
Sorry.
You cool?
Yeah.
Okay. The United States Communist Party was formed in 1919, and there were certainly by no later than the early 30s, there were black members. But even I think in the 1920s, they were trying, because the communist ethos is to try to have an entire world that is collectively owned by the people, and everybody collectively works to each other's best of their ability, you know, each according to their need, each according to their ability. And so you're supposed to like maybe never have an actual leader, except for it's impossible to never actually have a leader because people need to like be in charge of things. So that's why this like never, it just doesn't make any sense. But the thing is that in the United States Communist Party was always rather small, and one of the ways that they were able to recruit members was by appealing to what they would have called the Negro population. And they would have talked about the oppression of Negroes. And then they came down very hard against what they called white chauvinism. And they were trying to say that, you know, you shouldn't belittle people for being a part of this community just because they're black, blah, 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 blah. And that was always in the United States Communist Party, even prior to World War II. Like even,
yes.
So, that long tradition of far leftist, black Marxist, communist stuff has been around for close to 100 years now in the United States. And so you see remnants of that, you know, if you ever spend time even in Seattle, like if you meet like Black Lives Matter people and then they introduce you to some old guy that was a part of the Black Panthers or something, and these are all people who are communists, like that's a well-established tradition. It's not that hard to detect.
So all my friends except for me attended like communist gatherings. Actually, like almost all my friends called themselves radical communists. I would have said I was too, just to fit in and not, you know, rock the boat at all. But it's kind of funny because like I have this this he's not even black, he's like half black, you know, but he's like super mad because his girlfriend broke up with him, so he like put like he got this like leather punk jacket and he put like a whole bunch of like leftist like flags, and he put like a Nazi sign with like the line through it, like a no Nazis emblem on it, and just all this crazy shit, you know. I was like, wow, shit, dude, you know. People are crazy.
I want you to get back to the story that I derailed you. Like I knew I would derail you, and I want you to get back to it. But first though, the level of complete and utter paranoia from the radical Marxist types in the Seattle and it's Olympia, Washington, which is where Evergreen is. And it's within an hour of, so it's not that far away. And also Tacoma, which is in between them. The level of complete and utter paranoia from this region is so bad that like I don't know how this came into being, but like supposedly there was going to be a group of Nazis that were going to come and target people of color and queer people.
Yep.
And so they had sent out this warning, and then somehow miraculously this like Somali like Muslim guy ended up falling from a rooftop and dying, and all sorts of people were like, see, they came and they killed him. They targeted him because he was a Somali, and like no questions asked. Everybody just assumed that was the case. And then it turned out that within a month or two, they you know thoroughly investigated it, talked to everybody who was there. He smoked pot for the first time in his life. He freaked out because he felt like he had violated a law, like, you know, his scripture.
That's sad.
Yeah, and there was security footage of him like going and just like throwing himself off the roof of the building. So it's entirely untrue, this allegation that it was Nazis. But people in the far left, it's not like they're gonna ever fact check it. They probably think it still happened. Like they just don't know.
This is a huge problem in our society. I just want to take a moment to say here that I think one of the biggest things that we need to fix in our society is people's willingness to accept something as a fact because they like what it sounds like before even double checking any figures or statistics. Yeah. Just want to throw that out there. That's a big pet peeve of mine. Yeah. But whatever.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we were talking about I remember where I derailed you, which is this victimhood, people capitalizing upon victimhood, and there's an actual hierarchy that they make their full-time job finding the biggest victims and corralling them, and that's the best way to kind of say it. Like if some woman is like, I'm an intersectional activist that does outreach and I do it full time, that probably means that she finds vulnerable street kids and parades them around so that rich people throw money at her. is probably what it is.
Kind of reminds me of just like, unscrupulous, greedy lawyers, kind of. They'll just use anybody to further their own whatever.
Yeah. But does that sound in line with the type of people that you ran into at these gatherings?
You know what? I have to say, when I was at the gatherings, it was a lot more just like nobody gave a fuck about like anything. Honestly, like the radical fairies might have their like ideologies and stuff, but nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about communism, honestly, when they're there. It's like when the radical fairies are like outside of the gathering, that's when they're like all communist. But when they're like actually in the gathering, they just are like fucking like doing drugs and whatever the fuck, And
trying to make it seem like a utopia.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's the thing. Like I feel kind of stupid because when I first like visited it, I was like, wow, this is cool, Like, all right. But then a couple years later I was like, ooh, what was I doing?
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, I mean, I've been feeling that way for about 3 years straight since certainly no later than when I started my channel. I was like, who was I hanging out with? They just had me, playing music and making like I was the one providing the music and like, hey, I'll always play a show. Playing shows is fun,
because you like to do things you're good at. It makes you happy, Yeah.
Yeah. I was being meritocratic amongst the fools, Like, did you ever run into the thing where they would it would be called the No Talent Show?
No, but at Nova they did kind of have stuff like that.
Okay. Well, the thing is, I mean, Nova had, when I went there, they had talent shows, and it was really cool because you got to experience what kids were actually really passionate and good at.
Mm-hmm.
But at the fairy gathering, the really, really calmy one, like the really like the one that's been taken over by the intersectional wacko in Wolf Creek, Oregon.
Oh God, I've heard so many bad stories about Wolf Creek. Oh my, I've never been, but heard it's bad.
Yeah. Well, it's ultimately it's going to go bankrupt. You can't just ban everybody forever, like until like you're just going to no longer have anybody willing to pay for anything at all, and then you have to go bankrupt. Like that's what's going to happen because this woman is running it. Like she is running that ship into the ground. Like she knows that she has no other ship to go to. So the Wolf Creek is the most communist out of all of them, and they have what's called a no talent show, and you're supposed to confine your performances to the quote unquote no talent show, but the quote unquote no talent show is mixed with people who are deliberately doing crappy performances, so nobody actually wants to watch it. And if someone were to
funny.
No, and if somebody were to spontaneously do a little, like if when the fire's about to head out and the sun is going up and somebody decides to spontaneously start singing and playing guitar, they'll get mad at that person because they say no, you're doing that, and that's supposed to be at the no talent show. The fire is not about your ego. The fire is a collective experience, and you're supposed to do that thing at the no talent show.
What like control freaks? Wow.
Yeah, but it's communists don't want meritocracy. They don't want people to be good at things, because if somebody's good at things, then they have a tendency to acquire wealth. Because with wealth comes because with skill comes wealth, and wealth is bad. So they don't want. It's a completely psychotic way of thinking. So
yeah, it's like they just want to set themselves up to say that they're victims and the world is shitty and it's unfair, and how they're such talented, great people, but the world can't put them in a place that's their fairy tale dream, whatever,
Yeah. So, but like, what are some more of your just stories about the fairies? Like, do you have any like interesting? Oh, okay. I want to ask you. You were talking about an experience of emotional vulnerability with Voldemort.
Yes, absolutely. That's a good example of actually an experience with fairies, because there's another person there, and this person was a Wolf Creek fairy.
Other person where?
There's another person with me and Voldemort.
Okay, so for the audience who's watching this, the three of you went on a camping trip together?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
And we basically set up a fire. We, I guess, like, picked some maple blossoms from the trees, and it tasted like shit, but whatever, because we were poor. We didn't have any money between any of us, so we were like out in the forest, like trying to find things we could eat just for fun, you know. Well, actually, not just for fun. It was partly necessity, but at the end of the night, Voldemort sits down next to the fire, and he just is bawling. He's bawling, you know. I actually feel kind of like an ass now for sharing this, but whatever. He kind of deserves it. He's being a dick to me, but you know.
Do you legitimately believe he was sincere?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Because, you know, like, I think he is probably so bad at retaining friendships and just being an overall likable person that I don't think he has people to be emotionally vulnerable around. You know?
Everyone hates him. He's a horrible.
No. So it was like a thing. It wasn't like he was putting on a show. It was more like he was doing this for his own peace of mind, kind of. You know. And I just remember, like, I don't know. I just didn't know what to say. I was kind of like, you know, patting him on the shoulder, like, oh, there, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. Because he broke up with his boyfriend, and his boyfriend was abusive or some shit. I don't know. Like, honestly, I have no idea what was going on there.
I think. Just side note, I think that he was the abusive one, and
of course,
it was like also just knowing that guy and how psycho he is. Like, I think that it probably got to the point where, you know, like it was like he was probably doing everything he could to get him to hit him, like on purpose. Like he knew that.
Oh, I bet it.
Like he knew that if he got him to hit him, then he could blame everything on him, and which is what he did. Like he went around telling everybody, "Oh my god, he beats me," and it was like,
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's because I didn't get a bad vibe from his ex-boyfriend. Like, I don't.
It's all right, you know. It's just that, like, it would be weird. Like, one time I like called one evening, you know, and I just wanted to know if they had any extra weed they could sell me, and it was so funny. Monsanto was like, oh, I said his name. Whoops. Okay, so he was like, sorry. He was like, he's like, you're gonna have to talk to Fox, you know, that's what I'm going to call his boyfriend, Fox. You're going to have to talk to Fox if you want to buy Bud. And I'm like, well, I don't have Fox's number. Could you just, like, wake him up and give him the phone or something, you know? Or maybe I can call again later, you know? And he's like, oh, I guess so, but he's not going to be happy about it. It was all that shit. But that was the only weirdness I got out of that. Like, I don't know. I mean, the thing was, I did see this guy being violent at, is it called Ponies? I forget the name of the,
Oh, yeah, I think I know what you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah. It's been such a while now that I don't even remember the names of the venues anymore. But yeah, like I remember I would go out sometimes with the couple, and Voldemort's boyfriend started like picking fights with the lesbians and like shoving them and punching them and stuff. I'm not making that up. The reason I'm saying that is just so that, you know, there's a little bit of context, because it's like, okay, maybe Voldemort was being abusive. Maybe he was, but maybe Fox hit him too. Maybe. I mean, I've seen Fox hit people. I have. So yeah, I don't know.
But you always have to wonder. I mean, and this is a heavy wonder, which would be
maybe my internet fucked up.
Oh, sorry. I
think I disconnected. What happened?
No, it was not. No, it was me. Oh. It's not you, it's me. So, okay. So this is a heavy speculation about what might have been going on in the situation, which might have been that Voldemort theoretically, because I know that he went around telling everyone all about how he was in this abusive relationship, because I heard about it. Like, so I know that he was like, he had this little victim narrative for himself based around his relationship.
Yeah.
He could have very well had told some lesbians about it, and the lesbians might have decided to get involved in on the drama, because yeah, and maybe it had to do like, maybe because like, let's say you were the guy who was actually being abused, and then some lesbian tried to like come at you like you're beating up your boyfriend, and it's like, no, he's the actual abusive one. Like, I can imagine getting really mad at those women for doing that.
Oh,
and
totally.
So that's the like, I will not put anything past the level of pure honest to God, best way to say it would be weaponized toxic femininity coming from Voldemort. Like, because he was toxic femininity. Like, he was a great example of gay man who was toxic feminine.
Absolutely. He would, you know, it was funny because sometimes I would have a really great time with him and everything was normal and cool. And then, like, he'd just wait for the perfect moment. Like, just wait for that perfect moment where I would just look as bad as possible in the picture and then tag me in it. You know? He'd always be, like, pulling shit like that, you know? Or, like, just, like, or, like, putting things on my timeline, I remember. And I had to, like, change my timeline option so he'd stop doing that, you know? Like, I don't know. He was just, like, very, like, aggressive about things. Like, passive-aggressive, you know? He's, like, aggressive about things, but, like, in your face is very passive. But yeah, you know, I didn't really handle my relationship with him as a friend very maturely, because what happened was, and I'm not proud of this, when I moved away, I immediately blocked his number and his Facebook without saying anything. He thought we were just normal friends, and I just blocked him for, like, no reason that he could have known. So I'm sure he wasn't happy about that. It was not very mature of me, but, you know, I guess it is a little passive-aggressive of me, because, I mean, he kind of, like, tried to troll me in some ways, you know, and I've always been very, like, I'm kind of, like, easy to get along with and nice, you know. I don't really try to, like,
I would say more than anything, you're fair.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's what my daddy says about me. Oh man. So yeah.
And I just want to say really, really quick. I think that it did not take. I think it took about 10 minutes of Voldemort seeing you and I talking to each other for him to realize that he was dealing with two people that he could not control, because he was dealing with two people that are fair.
Sure. There's a really weird dynamic going on there, though. Like, I was actually, like, the most starving I've ever been in my life, and so the only thing I was thinking about were the pretzels that came with the beer. That was, like, the only thing my mind was on, to be honest. Like, I was trying my best to have a conversation with you, but I was just, like, starving. I was, like, eating all the pretzels I could.
Well, yeah, but that was before, like, we went over to Voldemort's house.
Oh, yeah, that's right, we did, yeah. I forgot about that.
No, I got to be the point where I was drunk and I, like, didn't quite understand. Like, I was like, well, I'll fill you up with beer, and you're like, I would prefer pretzels. I'm like, I'll get you that too. Like, okay. I didn't get it.
I know. Well, actually, I mean, this is kind of a random note, but I have, like, the worst alcoholic genetics, and I turn into an awful shitty person when I drink. So I try to stay away from drinking as much as I can anyways, you know, but that's just me, you know, because, yeah, you know, drinking's for some people, and I wish I was able to handle it, but unfortunately, like, I don't know. I just always end up forgetting the horrible things that I did, and it's like, no, not doing that again. So,
regardless, though, I think that this operative notion of a person who is willing to very deliberate, like, you know for a fact that he was attempting to emotionally manipulate you by trying to you said take pictures of you that you felt were unflattering and then tag you in them. He also opened up himself a bunch in front of you, but now you know
Right.
that had you opened up a bunch in front of him, he would probably use that against you.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and okay, we also know for a fact that this guy was in an abusive relationship with his boyfriend and was eager to brag about it. Like he was eager to tell everyone that that was the deal.
Yeah.
And I also have a personal long-standing run-in with this individual, which is that he I guess he decided that I was counterproductive to the party of in some sorts in a way, to the point where he was trying to get rid of me in every forum. He was trying everybody that we knew in common in amongst the all among along the West Coast, you know, and like this guy and I, we both know over 1,000 people on Facebook, and we know a lot of, you know, probably hundreds of people in common. This guy was trying to use everything that he could to tell these people not to talk to me. And so he had all of these, there were some remnants of truth to some of the things that he was saying, you know, like trying to tell people that I am an alcoholic and that, you know, which like was kind of true for a while. But I was like, yeah, well, that would maybe hurt my feelings a little bit more if I hadn't, you know, entirely quit booze for 6 months and now drink only, you know, a few times a month. Like that's not an issue of mine. And he's like, well, you're gonna relapse. Like, it's like, okay,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
clearly you want me to relapse, because then you get to pretend like you're right about something, you know, like you want to discredit me. That it's like your entire purpose. Now, he is actively close friends with the people who are in charge of Wolf Creek. He works with them.
Okay.
Yeah. He says, you know, he's a very problematic person, as in, you know, like in terms of like he doesn't do well with language policing or anything, but he works with them, and he also works with some of the Bay Area people who are associated with another land which is called Groundswell. And Groundswell is maybe even supposed to be like more of a communist utopia than, like, it was supposed to be a fairy place, and now it's just an intersectional queer space, you know.
Mhm.
And this guy, what it looks like to me, from in particular in the way that he was dealing with this one other guy, was that Voldemort does the dirty work so that this other guy doesn't have to get his hands dirty, but he takes his orders from this other guy. And
Yeah,
so
like the social assassin.
yeah, and so because Voldemort has no morals and no.
Yeah, he doesn't care about himself even, you know. So he'll throw himself under the bus just to make sure that that other person got thrown under the bus with him, and then he's like, ha ha, you know, it's like, fuck you.
Yeah, it's like he's going on a kamikaze mission. And like, you can, if you actually met this person, you see just like how low these people are willing to go. Like, they don't care about anything, including themselves. And it's almost, and yeah, I guess you said that you sort of feel bad for this Voldemort character.
I do, dude. Okay, let me tell you. Maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh here, but let me tell you, when the last time I saw him, he was like bawling in his bed, and he was just like crying. He's like, I don't want to go to Puerto Rico. I don't want to see my family members. They hate me. I'm queer and I'm weird and they won't like me. And I'm just like, oh my God, they'll love you. You're their family member, you know? He's like, I don't know. And then it turns out he had a wonderful time. You know, so like,
yeah.
You know,
well, no, it's so strange with him because, like, okay, he explained to me how he feels about like the Communist Party and stuff, because the thing is that most people don't actually follow it. Like, when these people start like bringing up communism and stuff, they just assume that they're like kind of telling people like new things that they've never heard before at all, which isn't true at all to me and at all in any way, because my dad was literally a member of the United States Communist Party in the 1950s. So like,
that's interesting though. Like, you must know a lot about it then. That's cool.
Well, you know, in a weird way that like I'm good at I went to Nova, where there were certain teachers that were like full on Marxists, probably.
Definitely.
And then, but at the same time, if I ever started, thinking in those terms, and I said anything about it to my dad, he'd be like, well, what do you think about that? Like, Prince, like, do you think that there can be a functioning society if people are not rewarded for being more productive than each other? And I was like, I mean, people could try, but I feel like, wouldn't there even be like capitalistic microcosms that would develop within those societies? And he was like, actually, yes, that happened in Stalinist Soviet Union. There were people that were productive and they got rewarded basically as being capitalists within communism because they were very productive. And I was like, okay, see, and he's like, yeah, see, and that's why it falls apart. And I was like, okay. So I got very good at thinking in terms of debunking this stuff from a very early age. And I have a sense of knowing when somebody just probably doesn't know about things like global economics, but they're trying to talk about it. So I remember talking to Voldemort, and Voldemort was, like, we were at Green Lake and we were with a now departed friend, and I'm not sure if you ever met the guy, but a very, very great guy.
Does his name start with an N?
No.
Okay.
No, and he was, being Voldemort, talking about people of color, because Voldemort is like sort of mixed, except for you wouldn't know.
I swear he just makes up a new like combination every time. He can argue that he's from like anywhere, just about, I'd imagine,
Yeah. So he was trying to like say that, he's from Puerto Rico and he's a communist, and he thinks that the Caribbean islands, he was saying that Puerto Rico should combine forces with Cuba, and if Cuba and Puerto Rico combined their forces and became a sovereign nation, they could be economically sustainable and they would never have to answer to the United States. And I'm just thinking to myself,
that's such a bad deal for Puerto Rico. I mean, I know Puerto Rico got fucked up by us, well, not even by us, but like we didn't really help them. But still, it's like, even if like let's say they had joined Cuba, what good would have happened when they got hit with a hurricane? What good would have Cuba done? Like, come on.
It's like, well, you have socialized healthcare. Oh yeah, you with the surgical equipment that's literally rusty. Like, it sounds good. It sounds great. Yeah, no, it's complete. Like, I mean, the way that Western communists have tried to like revise history is so obscenely awful. Like, for example, they try to make it. You've heard of this book, A People's History of the United States?
Oh, I read it many times.
Yeah. Okay. It's a horrible text. It's a complete. It is the epitome of.
Right. I actually learned that like Christopher Columbus. I mean, he was an asshole, but he wasn't that much of an asshole, really. He was just an asshole. Just a regular asshole.
Yeah, he was one of many assholes during an era when everyone was assholes for hundreds of years.
Yeah, it's like, and I feel kind of bad for the guy.
Well, I don't fucking feel bad for him, but here's the thing: is that like that book is built. It's. Are you familiar with the concept of lying by omission or lying by selective omission?
Yeah, it's when you lie by simply omitting words or omitting things, omitting facts.
Yeah, omitting the like you could. Let's say you shot a picture of a crowd of 15 people and then you cut out 13 of the people to make it look like it was only these two people in the room together. Yes. Well, that would be a lie by omission. Even though these two people were in the same room with each other, right? Well, that entire book is based around lying by omission. And okay, so for example, the entire thesis, like that body of that work, is based around the notion that that the United States colonialists, they genocided all of the Native Americans, which is like largely just not true. Was mostly just diseases, and like over 90% just disease. And then also, like, if you really actually were to dig deep through the different wars and why the wars were probably fought, it probably came as a result of diseases. Just, I mean, I haven't actually done this homework, but like, I mean, think of it this way. If you're tribes people and you know that the tribe across the plains got wiped out as soon as the European settlers met with them and they all died of disease, well, you're going to keep those people away because your tribe is going to die, and so then you would fight wars to keep them away. And that's where it gets more complicated, and that's just, but okay, so there's that. But what's big, but the bigger thesis statement is that everything that the United States is built around slavery, and that it's exploitation, and that it built the economy, and blah 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 blah, and that's capitalism. It has a foundation of slavery, right?
Right. Well, 13th, what was it? 13th Amendment or 13th something? It was like
the 13th Amendment. That is what when the slaves were freed, it became legal to have slavery as long as somebody's in prison. Now that
duly convicted if they are in prison twice.
Oh, okay. I don't.
Still, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Thanks for pointing that out. So it's good to know precisely what these things are in order to be able to correct the record, right? Yeah. And one of the things is with this, the problem with this book is that they act like everything that we have now is built on this like legacy of slavery. That's like the thesis statement of this book. Like everything that we have now was the product of hundreds of years of black slavery. And
that would be like saying 100 years from now, every great thing 100 years from now was based on giving tax breaks to the rich. Wow, like no.
Or something dumb like okay, so but here's the thing. The mere island, and this is where it becomes just a major lie by omission. The island of Cuba, just the island of Cuba itself, which is not a very big territory, took in more than twice the amount of slaves than all of mainland North America.
Right.
Like, and by a considerable amount, it's something like, like 115%. Like
I actually
more.
Never heard that before.
No one ever tells
black
you.
In Cuba, but I didn't know that. Yeah, that's
There's all sorts of black people in Cuba, and there's even more in the Dominican Republic and Haiti, which is the same island. And they actually had a revolution to get rid of their French enslavers, and then the economy collapsed entirely. And so Puerto Rico's just sort of in there, and it's one of the smaller. But the thing is that Howard Zinn, who wrote A People's History of the United States, he leaves out the part that that this island, Cuba, has had way more, especially in terms of geographical square feet, than the United States, slaves shipped to it. And the reason why is because he's a communist and Cuba is a communist nation. Now, people would say, well, they were rebelling against capitalism. Okay, they did that by literally putting people like gay men in concentration camps when Che Guevara got into power. Like, that is well documented that Che Guevara was putting gay men into concentration camps.
Whether it's communism or fascism, it's still dangerous populism.
Yeah, well, I mean, ultimately, fascism and communism is really not that much different. Like, because in order for these regimes to happen, it takes a in-group preference and an out-group prejudice. And there's schools of thought about, who is in charge of all of these things. And there's some people who think nobody should be in charge, like Trotsky. That was his thing. He was friends with Stalin for a while, and then he felt that Stalin had become too powerful and he had to go into hiding. And I believe that he was assassinated in Mexico City. He was ice picked. And then
never heard that. Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, Trotsky believed in a perpetual state of revolution in which there should never be a set in stone leader. And Stalin said, no, we need to force communism to work by any means necessary. So that's sort of like the difference in terms of dictators. Now, each and every dictator has a set idea of who the ideal the ideal citizen will be if they're going to appoint themselves to be the dictator. And ultimately, in order for one of these, communist, socialist type regimes to be put into place, somebody actually has to take the reins and declare themselves the leader, which is exactly what Hitler did. Hitler literally did the same thing in that he enlisted numerous different policies that he felt would benefit his idealized citizens. But of course, that included demonizing people like the Jews,
dividing and conquering, and all of that, and demonizing. Absolutely.
Well, no, but there wasn't even all that much to like divide and conquer. It was largely just like keeping the homogeneity of the German population, trying to take back the banks from the Jews, trying to take back weapon manufacturing. One of the things that he did that was a socialist idea was that Hitler made it so that it was illegal to profit off of weapon manufacturing somehow. And that was actually like a socialist. He has his entire like 25 list of ways that he saw socialism working. And it was very different than the way that Stalin saw it, sure.
Right.
But Stalin was throwing like gay guys into the gulag too, and the gulag is a concentration camp. So it's like fucking like here we are, just gay guys being like, okay, I'm not gonna let I'm gonna keep myself safe, like ultimately.
Yeah.
I'm gonna shed light on these things ultimately. So
yeah, it's very important.
Here you go. Apple from heaven.
One sec.
Oh, I'm sorry. Here.
All right. So,
sorry, but someone walked into the room.
Oh, no, it's okay. So yeah, people should keep in mind that, like, I guess that sort of the takeaway from this live stream, just in the way that we talk about this stuff, is that there's so few people who really know about these politics and really understand them, even within these own circles. And they know that they can kind of like there's people who live year round at the Wolf Creek land, and they probably get an allowance from the head organizer to, like, you know, buy a few things every once in a while, like when they need it, like get a new hoodie every eat some gruel or something, you know. And all they know is that it's never occurred to them that they could maybe get a job, and to the point where they probably are unemployable. Like, they've been this crazy transgender, you know, like there's this person in particular that I'm thinking of who brags about the fact that they're unemployable, who I think is biologically male, went on hormones enough to, like, develop breasts, will frequently take off their shirt at the fire to show everybody their breasts, but then also has a long, thick beard that they, like, dye pink and stuff. And this person, they're absolutely not employable. Where could you get where like what, like as a zoo specimen? You know,
I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe at a gulag. No, sorry, that's bad. See, I'm an ass. I'm sorry, I'm an ass.
No, but you've interacted with these people, like you've met them, and I want to give people sort of a little bit of a inside perspective of like, because I can tell
Okay.
I can tell the stories of it, but it's good to have someone be like, oh yeah, I've met these
Yeah,
people.
kind of is. Yeah, good to have more than like one dissenting voice. Maybe I used that word wrong. Anyways, I'll get right to it. So at the fairy camp, there were like the old hippies that like would be there every year, and then some of them maybe get too old and not show up as often. Those guys were usually really, really nice and friendly, you know, and they were cool. But then there were like the like road dogs, the homeless kids, you know, and those kids, you know, they're all right. Like, it's just like they're so deeply entrenched in that homeless culture that it's like it's all they know. So you can't have like any real conversation with them, to be honest, because they just kind of like blankly stare into, you know, anything. It's just they're just kind of like zombies, you know. Except they can't even control their fucking dogs, but whatever. Like, you know, it can be pretty peaceful, and then sometimes there are like really weird things that happen. Like one time in the middle of the night, there's this guy running around naked, screaming "cat" over and over and over again at the top of his lungs, and like I just remember like being so pissed off, and I threw a bottle at him.
He was yelling "cat." You muted yourself.
Oh, yeah, no, my clothes did that. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, so he was yelling "cat."
Yeah, maybe that's just an inconsequential thing to bring up, you know. But it's just like one of the weirder things that I've seen there, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen. I mean, it's almost kind of funny. Like I've seen people who like dress up in these costumes where it's like a Count Dracula cape and like a weird mask, but then everything else completely naked. Stuff that will like that made me burst into laughter the second I saw it. You know what I mean? Like
I'm
instead
laughing.
of like being creeped out by it, I like was in tears laughing. You know, so like I'd rather be in tears laughing about shit than like being creeped out by shit. But there are like some real assholes there. You know, a few of the older hippies there are just like have like personality disorders straight up. You know, they're just really hard to deal with. You know, and there are always like, the same few people who squabble and fight too. So you kind of like learn to identify them, stay away from them and stuff. And you know, I don't know how many of them are like hardcore drug addicts, but you know, a reasonable amount of them, right? You know, it's like I've heard that at the Tennessee Short Mountain Sanctuary, I've never been there, but I've heard there's like a lot of like crack smoked there and other stuff like that. So I don't know if like you know, people hide that shit pretty well, I think. So like it would be hard for me to tell if I could actually like see people doing that sort of shit at the gathering. But there were times when some of the fairies would just be like acting like they just smoked a whole bunch of crack. It's like, okay, they probably did, you know? And like there's some people I really like, you know, who are like older than me, and I like would, you know, come to them and like ask them for advice and stuff, and like super sweet. We'd crack jokes, stuff like that. Stay in touch, whatever. And then there were some people who were just like tweakers who just wanted to get attention or really stupid. So they'd like start talking about like astrology and metaphysical shit and stuff to like get your attention. And like the thing about me is that like I'm one of these people who like likes to hear a crazy or stupid person do their whole long-winded speech. I like to hear all of it. You know, I'm not the kind of person that cuts them off because I see it as like, you know, it's entertaining to me. You know, so like I did kind of enjoy
and there's always a little bit of a nugget of like truth and passion in it.
Yeah. Usually, you know, you're in the right mind state. You know, you're like out in the wilderness and you're like kind of like dealing with your baggage and shit like that. It's like really easy to take things as metaphors for life and take things as like lessons. You know, I will say like as far as safety goes, I think it's actually pretty safe. Looking at a lot of those people, wouldn't want to trust them, but you know, nobody ever stole anything from me. Nobody did anything to me. Everybody was pretty cool, you know.
Do you know what one of the things real quick, because you were talking about people wearing like Dracula capes, but
I couldn't help but mention that.
Okay, so like there is this strange not as much because of the feminist element. So feminists are big, they're very anti-sex, and they always have been and always will be. Like don't let them lie to you. What that means is that they encourage women to use and abuse men as they see fit, but men aren't allowed to express sexuality unless they have been explicitly told to
Right.
first. And that includes gay men. They want to control
Yeah.
all of it. And but one of the very strange things about the figurehead of the radical fairies, the historical person, Harry Hay, which many people cite as many people both among the left and the right cite him as the founder of this movement, which isn't entirely true. But one of the things that the right uses to criticize him, I've heard this come up, is that he endorsed NAMBLA, the North American Man Boy Love Association.
That's a thing? I thought that was a joke.
No,
Wow.
no, that's a real
not
thing.
a joke? You serious?
Yeah, they had a South Park episode.
Oh, yeah. That's what I thought it was like a reference to, you know?
No, that has been around since like the 70s and 80s. And I think the deal is that it's okay. So in the 70s, people were exploring sexual norms, right?
Yes.
And people were experimenting with bisexuality, and there was a lot of sex going on between 14, 15-year-old girls and rock stars and things like that. And I think eventually people decided that that's not a good idea.
Well, I think it's HIV that really made things change, right? I mean, it's kind of obvious.
Probably. And but the thing is that like there was this group of gay men who I think at first were just saying, well, hey, we're just saying that, when it's a 15-year-old boy having a relationship with a 25-year-old, maybe it's not the worst thing in the world, which, like, I'm not going to make that argument. I wasn't that 15-year-old guy, and I am not attracted to 15-year-old guys. But at the same time, like, I can see how that was something to bring up in the 1970s for a while. But as time went on, they actually created organization called the North American Man Boy Love Association. They still have a website, and
I should take a look at that.
It's
That's
it has they have.
Well, it's not funny. It's sad, but
it's strange, is what it is. It's
right.
strange. So what they do is they have like pictures of like it'll be like 3 11-year-old boys with their shirts off with their arms around each other and like crap like that. And then there's like this, like there'll be like a testimonial section. That's what I found most interesting was like, when I was 13, I pursued my camp counselor and I don't regret it and blah, 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 blah. So Harry Hay, the founder, or not the founder, he wasn't the founder. He was the figurehead, the person that people think of as the founder. He was a part. He was a part of NAMBLA for a very long time, and I believe all through maybe even the 90s. And he probably actually maybe kind of was a pedophile. And the reason I say that is because I've just started reading his biography, and the first time he had he came from a very religious family, and he had never seen male genitalia at all until his father was leaning him over. Like he was supposed to go to bed and his father was tucking him in when he was very ill. He was very ill for a while. And his father's dick came out of his pajamas. And he said he says it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. And
that's bizarre.
Yeah, it's totally bizarre. It's totally like that is the type of thing that pedophiles are made of. You know what I mean? Like it's like, yeah, that's not what most gay guys are like, actually. Like that's you having some weird daddy issues, which he does. He's majorly has daddy issues, this guy. So
yeah, I mean a lot of us do, but like I guess some more than others.
Yeah, some considerably more than others. I think that the majority of gay guys don't have sexual daddy issues.
No, I mean no, I don't think so.
Okay, so, but I'm sorry, I derailed this because you were talking about the nudity and stuff, and so there is this strain of like sexual exhibitionism and things that you really do run into, and the type of people who probably have like the personality disorders, they're probably like, well, Harry Hay was a part of NAMBLA, and it's like, okay, you're actually crazy. You know, like,
yes.
I want you to go back to
Yeah. I was gonna say something and then I like totally lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. Uh, well, you know, there were some weirdos there, and I just did my best to stay away from those people. I ran into some people from Nova when I was at the gathering, and you know, they were the kind of people I would have expected to see there. In terms of the community, you know, there were a few people my age that I got along with and had fun with, you know, but for the most part, it was like people older than me actually, like 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever. Oh, and I finally remember what I wanted to say. Okay, so in 2014, when I was in the Utah gathering, I like it was like a friend of a friend or something, like a friend of a relative, and like his name was Dennis Perone, and he like I don't even want to say this, like he kind of like fell in love with me when he looked at me, and I spent the rest of the time trying to get away from him. But like the point is that he um is like a retired Republican politician who advocated for the legalization of weed in California. Um, and he had that kind of like libertarian mentality. And my whole point of saying that was that I think it's a very interesting example of what you might find in the radical fairies situation. You wouldn't expect to find a person who used to be a Republican politician in there, you know?
Yeah.
So and I don't think people ever really talk politics there anymore. To be honest, maybe there might be some chastising having to do with diet. Oh yeah, that's it. That's it right there. Bingo. So there are a lot of people who are like addicted to hard drugs, you know, crack, uh, heroin, meth, whatever the fuck, you know, and they love to like deflect their own sense of like self guilt from it by like kind of like uh going on like a diet inquisition. They like go, you know, and they try to like ask you like, are you a vegetarian? Are you vegan? You know, and they try to spread the word of vegan God. You know what I mean? They try to convert you to the veganism religion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they proselytize and they veggie Bible thump. I guess I don't know how to say it.
Yeah.
Like it just
No,
reminds me of like
I run
how, like
into it
yeah.
even. I run into that crap sometimes even in my. I was literally just yesterday was running to that in my comments when I talk about things like the far left. I'm like, you know, this far leftist activist right before he goes to work at a vegan bakery, you know, blah blah blah. I guess I say something just like that, which is demonstrably true if you spend time with the far left, like the radical foot soldier people's work at
Yeah, it's
plays
kind of like a stereotype kind of. Maybe a
yeah,
truth.
but no, and there's a lot of truth to it. Like these
Yeah.
people do work at like vegan bakeries. That's like
Yeah.
actually what they do.
Yeah.
And people are like, well, blah blah blah. It's not a political thing for me. And I'm like, well, it happens to be with a lot of these people. So
Because it's like they don't want people thinking that they're unhealthy. They want to see
oh,
themselves
hold
as
on one
healthier
second.
than everybody else.
I have someone at my door. Hold on one second.
Yeah.
All right, sorry. Sorry about that. I had ordered some food and I was checking to make sure if the order was correct or not. So,
Yeah, no, I get like really obsessive over that stuff. Yeah, so I totally get you there.
okay. So, we should be like trying to wrap this up because I think it's
Yeah,
kind
it's been a while.
but I wanted to ask in particular, you said that there was like old hippie people that were cool, and I have run into a number of like old or old-ish guys that were just generally good guys that were I mean in particular gay men, because gay men stick together, and gay men because they have to, because nobody else really sticks up for them, right? And what I am wondering is, what do you think about this notion of, do some of these guys just end up kind of looking good due to who they're surrounded by and the fact that they have to like take care of all of these like weird homeless people?
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. That's it. Yeah. I don't understand it personally. I can't relate to it, but yes, that's it. Hit the nail right on the head. That's my opinion. But I wanted to add that, like, I think that that sort of environment though of like the radical fairies they're not even radical, the fairies at the Rainbow Gathering, it's actually not that different from like standard American community groups. Like you have like, I'm not trying to rag on like Christians or whatever, but let's say, you're in the deep South. I'm making a stereotype here, and you've got some like people who are like who feel like they can righteously do something evil to someone else because that person is not as moral as they are by that list of rules that they're holding. And it's like an excuse to do something sociopathic. So like in the name of morality, and that sounds kind of negative for me to say like standard American, but the thing is that like, when there's conflict in the group, it usually has to do with issues of like politics and morality, or like even spiritual things. Like, you're a glutton, you eat too much. That's bad, don't do that, I'm more moral than you. I don't do that, even though he was obviously smoking meth behind a tree there. You know what I mean? Shit like that.
Yeah.
And I think that you can find that a lot
the
in
most
America.
The most racist people around calling everybody else racist. Sorry, keep going.
My bad. So like, it's actually not that different and out there, but of course, the Gathering does kind of like have this kind of like fringy counterculture aspect to it, and it's like kind of, as I said, it's kind of like a homeless convention. So there's that aspect to it, but there are some really like adventurous, courageous, intelligent people that are just like so like at peace that they can just be like, yeah, I'm gonna fly from Amsterdam and go check out this Rainbow Gathering thing. It'll be fun, If you're willing to go all that way and do that, like, I have respect for those kinds of people, because that's like taking a big chance going into a situation that's very different from your own. I could even say that about myself, coming from Seattle and then going out in the woods somewhere. That's pretty different. But like, I've met a lot of people there that were like way, way, way out of my league in like how talented and awesome and cool they were. Like, I met some really, really cool artists, and I almost feel kind of embarrassed when I see like their name pop up in my social media and stuff and in my contacts, because it's like, I just feel like there's no way I'll ever really be like, cool enough to hang out with them. You know what I mean? So there are some cool people, but they didn't give me that like vibe of like, you're not cool enough. It's just like, I have my own issues of like self-worth and shit. You know what I mean? So, but like,
well, the best people always say that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's kind of
turns
the
out
Dunning-Kruger effect, right?
But yeah, I think that
maybe we could wrap up by like talking about like the fairies' lives outside of the gathering, because I feel like that for me kind of like was like the conclusion of me learning about this whole thing was when I saw how they behaved once the gathering was over.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
here, let me quickly say something though, because
Mhm.
and remember that's the thought. Like it's like your conclusion is like how they behaved outside, and that's what brought it all together for you. What I want to say about these things like the Rainbow Gatherings and also in particular Folklife Festival in Seattle, which is
Oh, yeah.
probably been going on since like the 60s, like actually. Now, I don't know how long that's been going on for, but a long time.
Yes.
And it's very clear that there's like people who perform Pete Seeger songs and there's a sing-along every year. And they do have, okay, so like Pete Seeger he did
He's very political, right?
he was yeah, he was, I think, actually sort of a Marxist, but he was being a Marxist like before, like I think so his most famous song is Where Have All the Flowers Gone?
Okay.
Do you know that song?
You know, I as a little kid, I listened to like all of his songs, and now I just don't remember like any of them. But
Okay,
I like
well,
them all.
look up the he Where Have All the Flowers Gone was recorded by many different artists. I would say that the best one is the various renditions of Peter, Paul, and Mary, because it works as a like revolving vocal type song where because it asks for audience participation and you know, like one of them will take a verse and then the other ones will guide the audience on how to sing it with them, and it becomes like a church sing-along kind of. And I started realizing that this is religious to these people. If you go to the Folklife Festival, it's religious, but it's not quite Christian. It's some different thing. It's this religion that I believe was born in the post World War II 1960s era, where people wished that we just never had to go overseas and fight a war again. And so they started valuing certain things. And so the sing-along is there. They started valuing the sacred feminine, started thinking of females as this like virtuous being, because supposedly women never start wars except for that. I mean, that was delusional. That's not actually true, but that's just a very short-sighted way of viewing things. They started valuing civil rights, so you know, the races, in particular the Black struggle, but also you know, indigenous people started being celebrated. And there were a few environmentalism came from that era. Like environmentalism had never really been a thing prior to the 1960s. And yeah, so there were a number of these kind of religious values, and they really did become religious. Oh, and LSD held it all together. People were feeling as if were having these spiritual epiphanies at places like Woodstock, but there was all sorts of, you know, things that were happening that were like that. In particular, in you know, smaller versions in San Francisco, probably you could go to like Golden Gate Park, and there'd be like a whole stage and like, you know, hundreds and hundreds of hippies tripping on acid together. And like, these people all thought that they were founding a new more perfect world. And you can still see remnants of that religious feeling at these gatherings, just that feeling. But I want you now to talk about how you observed people outside of these gatherings. The fairies in culture, in yeah.
Well, you know, they all seem, I hate to say this, but they all seem to be very, very angry, bitter, negative people who were unwilling to like do what was asked of them to be a member of society. Does that make sense? Like, yeah. I mean, I could understand, like, if you had a real like problem, like, I don't know. Never mind, but like, and I realize it's because like these people, they never really grew up, you know, they never really thought about how they would be like taking care of themselves. Because the whole thing about the gathering is, don't worry about it. We're all here together, and it's one big net, and we'll all take care of each other. no one's gonna go hungry. You know, nothing bad is gonna happen. We're all gonna take care of each other for 2 weeks.
What could possibly go wrong?
I will say though, to be honest, they actually are a lot more capable at keeping things safe than you would have imagined. But there were some moments of drama. I remember when I was in Montana, there was a camp that had like KKK members in it, you know, and then there were some like Nazi sympathizers, and yeah, I think they like bonded around like Satanism metal. It was really weird. And I remember they like went into like that main, because like, okay, there's always this like big meadow where like people sit and play music or play drums, and it's just like kind of like the center of the whole gathering, you know. And they like went into the thing and were like yelling like, we're gonna like hurt all these queers and homos and Jews and black people and all this shit. And actually they were taken care of, you know. I mean, they weren't like kicked out or anything, but it was like they had everything confiscated from them, you know, without like anybody really. I mean, I think there was this black queer guy that like for some reason like got in like a fist fight with one of them. Maybe he like broke his nose or something. And that was it, you know, like whatever. But I remember seeing that and I was a little bit freaked out because I've never really seen that shit before, you know.
Yeah.
I'm kind of sheltered to that. I don't usually see that like overt, willfully ignorant, like racist, like xenophobic shit, you know.
Well, and you know what I would say it's a better way to describe it is white identitarianism. You know, people who the only thing that they really care about is themselves and their communities being white people and caring after white people ahead of other people.
Right. I mean, I didn't think that they were there to actually hurt anybody. I figured they just like wanted to kind of like get attention, wanted to kind of play that terrorist part, you know what I mean? Then wanted to like be the terrorists. But
I guess.
Really
I don't know. I've never
you
been.
have to take my word for that.
Yeah,
you
yeah. Because
that.
I've never seen that. I just haven't seen that.
Right.
But,
that only happened in Montana. I didn't see that anywhere else, though. I will say that. Nowhere else.
So one of the things that I would say, like you were saying, that people have no ability to actually become grown-ups in the outside world, and this makes perfect sense if you study history. Like if you carefully study the history,
you know, well, not history, but sorry to interrupt.
If you very carefully study the history of the late 1800s, through the development of Marxism becoming more and more popular, and then the people who fought against, you know, people who were on the right side of history fighting against the Soviet Union, you know, this ultimately turned out to be the Soviet Union and Red China together turned out to be the most murderous force in human history. The only
right,
if there was anything that would even potentially rival it, it was over the course of, you know, a few hundred years as opposed to 100 years, and it's still very debatable. Very many people died very quickly. And the people who were on the right side of fight, and remember, Hitler was a collectivist. He was just fighting for his own people in his own way. Like, Stalin was a collectivist. He wanted to take over the whole world, but so did Hitler. Like, Hitler wanted to take over the whole world. So the people who really fought against this were people like the British. Actually did a very good job fighting, and they're very proud of their role in World War II. Like, because the thing that you have to remember is that the United States defeated Japan by dropping the nuclear bomb on them. But by the time that had happened, Hitler was essentially defeated in Europe. And it was a way for the United States to show Japan not to mess with, you know, like that the war was over.
Right.
But it was due to Great Britain that Hitler was already defeated. And so the British are very, very firm in defending their legacy in terms of, you know, that being on that right side of history. And
like anti-extremism, kind of. Like, let's have like a more moderate, like reasonable form of this thing that France is proposing that's more extreme or whatever, you know? Yeah.
Or they didn't even know what, like, when they were fighting World War II, they just knew that, like, way too many people in continental Europe were dying, and there wasn't going to be Great Britain anymore unless they stood up and tried to do their best. And a really, really great movie that you should watch is Dunkirk. Have you heard of this movie, Dunkirk?
I may have seen it, I may not. I'm not.
No, you would remember it. You would remember because it came out over the past like year and a half, and it was a World War II movie. It's made by the director of Memento. Do you remember that guy? Do you see that movie?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Well, so it's a really, really powerful movie about just what the British went through in World War II, and so when you take those people into account and also take, you know, United States World War II veterans and everybody, you know, people who survived Pearl Harbor and, you know, all these, and you try to explain to them, hey, just so you know, each and every one of these leaders, they all thought that they were going to be the best leader if they won, and we knew that they weren't, and so we stood up against them, and that's what we did. And all of these people are basically just sort of saying, no, you know, communism, maybe it's not so bad, maybe it'll all work. And that's why, and that was the entire 60s. Was after World War II, there was no example of why this doesn't really work that was easily available to people, and it was easy to fall into this type of thinking of like not taking responsibility for oneself. And the Vietnam War veterans, they did not want to go to war. It was a fool's errand. It was a war that they were going to lose. So it was easy to think that going to war was bad, except for, you know, sure, we shouldn't have probably gone into the Vietnam War because ultimately we were going to lose it. Like, that's why we shouldn't have gone into that war. But ultimately, the Vietnam regime was a communist regime. When communists get too much power, they become very dangerous. And so it's like these people don't have a sense of any of that. They don't have a sense of, like, when
interject with an idea.
When they're just, I'm almost at the end. When their grandfather would yell at them about the war and how they don't take things seriously, they just wouldn't get it. They just wouldn't get it, and you have to really study history to get it. So,
yes, it's a phenomenon called the Great Forgetting, a process over 80 years, typically. So I was thinking, like, maybe part of the reason why we have this, like, this sympathetic towards extremism mindset among the more educated and liberal populations is because we haven't seen a country that's relatable to our own be brought to its knees by a leader like this. What if Norway, for some reason, was brought to its fucking knees? Or, like, even Italy? Well, nah. I mean, what if France was brought to its knees? Maybe what
if Great Britain? What if Great Britain
was brought to its
knees? And there's an actual tangible way that might actually be happening right now, which is the mayor of London basically holds that place hostage.
Yeah,
and he's a Muslim.
I'm kind of scared. Like, I don't want to go to Europe. Fuck that.
Yeah. You should look into Sargon. Do you ever watch Sargon of Akkad?
I used to watch him a lot. Like,
okay, so if you ever want to be confronted with just how bad they have it, look for any of his videos about Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London. Okay. I think they call him the the world's smallest emperor or some like because what people need to keep in mind is that like if somebody amasses a large amount of power in London, it's kind of like being the most powerful person in both New York, LA, and Washington, DC.
Yes.
Now, granted, you're only the mayor, but that's a lot of concentrated power.
Yeah.
So
it's undeniable. London is pretty much the most important city. So, yeah.
Well, at least in terms of Great Britain, certainly. And so, yeah.
But then again, there's my like Anglo-Euro-centered mindset. This is why I need to see a white Anglo-European country be brought to its knees by communism before I can truly believe communism is bad. Being a little sarcastic. Because it's like, oh yeah, the Venezuelans, look at what happened to them. Oh yeah, they're brown. You know, people seriously think that way. I bet. You know, just a thought.
I think that you should watch Dunkirk instead.
Dunkirk?
Yeah, just the movie about the soldiers in fighting in World War. Because what's really beautiful about the story is that, and this is true, this really happened. There were thousands of soldiers on I think Normandy, France. Dunkirk is actually maybe like the city or something, like the beach is what it was, and they were fighting the Germans, and then they got stranded on the beach, and it was thousands of British, and they needed to take back their men and bring them back to the mainland on the UK in order to collect whatever information they got, like all sorts of things, like what type of weapons were the Germans using, what type of strategies were they using, and if they were still able-bodied, could they go back and fight again? It was very important to get these men back, and there were thousands of them, and so there was these very dedicated Navy people trying to do their best, but the Germans were shooting down the ships that were trying to get back their wounded men and stuff, and then the British Navy sent out a call to civilians, and so there was like yachters who could cross the English Channel, which takes probably about maybe 8 hours. These guys going across to pick up men, because it would be harder to bomb a whole bunch of civilians taking people back, and that actually happened. And had they not did all of that, like had they not rescued all of those men, we might have lost the war. Like at least we might have lost the UK, and then it would have been a much bigger war.
Yeah, I mean, we probably would have had to get involved over there. I mean, no shit, but well, yeah. That's nasty.
Yeah, so that's why you should watch that. And I think that there's actually plenty of historical stuff about communist regimes that will make an impact if you really research it. You just have to sit down and do it. And there's people who've devoted their entire academic careers to taking apart the evils of communism piece by piece and showing pictures, and so
yeah. I did read several books about Mao Zedong, and I know like a lot of the bad things that he did, and like, yeah, I mean, generally I am like not in favor of that shit. Not at all. I would say that, to put it very simply.
Okay. Well, I think that about concludes the stream. Thank you very much for coming on and chatting with us. And it'll be saved on my secondary channel. There was usually around 5 viewers watching at once, but when I do these Gaytriarchy shows, there's when people realize that it's a Gaytriarchy, there's maybe usually over 100 or so. There's a kind of a loyal audience of it usually gets over 200, but I don't know. It's not super likely because I didn't really advertise this one that well, and so yeah, don't feel self-conscious, but you will feel heard. How about that?
That's cool. To anybody out there, I'm sorry if I ruined this fucking podcast by eating an apple. I'm really sorry about that.
Oh no, you're totally fine. I'm sorry for doing the thing where I interrupt and sidetrack for about 3 minutes straight, and then
No, that's
try
cool, 'cause, like,
to.
I can't be going on like that. I'm not the kind of like brain that can just go on and on and on about one thing. I need to get sidetracked and come back to it. It's kind of how I work. So
Yeah.
it was perfect
Well,
for me.
and it's also, and it's always good for, like, when I know that somebody is actively listening, like they are engaged with the subject matter, to offer new pieces of information so that we can progress into speaking about it through that lens. And I think that that's worthwhile.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go off air, and I'm gonna grab my food. Talk to you guys later.